This is Dan Morgan and Dave Canales' first draft as the leaders of the Carolina Panthers organization, moving forward, moving on from some poor decisions made by an owner, but ultimately blamed on the head coach and GM because life just isn't fair sometimes. We'll look at the draft. Obviously, after one season, I'm more interested in the holistic approach of what the plan is for the Carolina Panthers and how they're going to move forward. I'm actually really excited. We're going to talk about that later. But looking at this 2024 class, we're going to talk about the players and how they're doing, but also what the entire plan was and maybe what the plan possibly could have been. All right, so looking at it as a whole, it's not hard to see what the plan was, right? 3 out of the top 4 picks for the Carolina Panthers are all offensive skill positions, so they clearly came into the draft with a plan. They knew they wanted to put as many weapons around Bryce Young to ultimately justify a Bryce Young pick that at this point when they were making this draft pick was looking like a historic bust, right? Especially with the whole Caleb Williams first pick, all the hype around that. And then obviously Panthers trading up 1 pick into the first round, 32nd overall pick to secure Xavier Legette, who has had a just okay season. And look, this is always tough, right? Because it's a wide receiver on a bad football team where offensive line has been a huge issue. Quarterback play was a huge issue for the majority of the season. And yeah, Xavier Legette, admittedly, when he was drafted, was kind of looked at as more of like a project wide receiver. At least that was my view of him throughout the process. I mean, he has incredible traits, and he still has all the potential that he had in April of 2024. He has all that. He just has another season under his belt. We look at the stats, and obviously this is just the 17-week stats. I'm recording this before the final week of the season. But as far as Xavier Legette, the prospect, he has his entire career in front of him. It's really just too early to make an assessment. I'm certainly not out on him by any means, but that's just where we're at with him. Unfortunately, we got to move on to Jonathan Brooks, who had a total of 9 rushing attempts in the 2024 season before re-injuring the same ACL that kept him out for the start of that same season. Man, just brutal. I don't really have anything else to say other than just prayers up for him. It's tough. He was the first running back taken in this class. And while Brooks has had a pretty disappointing rookie season, I will say the maneuvering that we were able to see from the Carolina Panthers, really, really cool. And I'm going to put it on the screen really quick for you guys just to show you. Obviously, traded down with the Rams all the way from 39 overall to 52nd overall. That's a pretty big jump in the second round. But we're able to secure a second-round pick in 2025, which is awesome, along with a 5th-round pick. And what did you do? You flip that 5th-round pick plus another one to move back up in that same round. So basically getting an extra 2nd-round pick and also getting the guy that I presume they were targeting the whole time anyway. Just wanted to quickly bring that up. The draft nerd in me loves stuff like that. So yeah, got an extra 2nd for next year. That's super cool. The Panthers did grab a linebacker out of Kentucky. Tevin Wallace was their 3rd-round pick. This is a guy who played in 13 games before ultimately needing shoulder surgery and missing the final 3 games of the season. Again, another situation where, hey, got a ton of opportunities, got a ton of snaps. 3rd-round pick who was a starter for the majority of the season is really, really great. Like, that's kind of the range where we're looking at guys, okay, can you start? How long is it going to take for you to figure it out? Got a ton of ops in his first season. Hopefully he can transfer that over into a sophomore season where he becomes more of a solidified difference maker on that defense. We'll see. Moving on, and I do just want to quickly talk about the day 3 picks because they had a lot of production at a day 3 picks, and that is a testament to the drafting. Dan Morgan did a great job. Former first-round pick, Carolina Panther, is drafting for the Carolina Panthers. Always love stories like that. They found Jatavion Sanders, tight end out of Texas. This was kind of that, again, there was Brock Bowers in this class, and there was kind of nobody else. Like, there was no, like, number 2, number 3 tight end that, like, people were super excited about. But if you had to name one, I feel like Sanders would have been the one that I would have named. I thought he was the number 2 tight end in this class, and you know, that just, he's a receiving tight end. He's not much of a blocker. That's just who he is. Again, finding weapons for a Bryce Young. And this is a guy that I did a rookie watch video on before he got hurt. I didn't plan the injury, by the way. I just happened to be almost like literally the week before he got hurt. I put that video out. So that was kind of unfortunate timing and unfortunate for him. But he's back after having a pretty tough neck injury. At midpoint through the season, he was the number one player according to Next Gen Stats in separation, which is kind of a tight end stat, but I thought kind of interesting, worth mentioning. And look, sky's the limit for him. I'm actually really, really excited about him. I don't think there's anybody in this draft class that I'm more excited about, to be honest with you. Like I'm in love with this dude. I love Ja'Tavion Sanders. I love what he's shown. Ton of explosion, a ton of athleticism, big physical guy, obviously. Really, really excited to see him. He's a big slot. I don't need him to block. I don't need him to be the end-line tight end. We can find somebody for that. Another name that we got to talk about. This is awesome, by the way. Like, just for the Carolina Panthers watching at this point, to be talking about guys that are making a difference in the 5th round, a cornerback out of Washington State, drafted in the 5th round, who, he struggled. He did. But he earned the starting nod after week 13. He got a 7-tackle game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and earned the starting nod moving forward. So, again, another guy who is developing and is earning starting snaps for the Carolina Panthers moving forward. In the 5th round, that's all you can ask for. If we're getting any kind of production, any kind of starting snaps, any kind of opportunities to grow and develop, we love it. I'm super, super thrilled with him. That is the draft class as a whole. And it's a good class. We have a ton of potential from Leggett, ton of potential from Sanders. Really like what we're seeing from Wade. Really, really like what we're seeing from Wallace. We've gotten a lot of production from him first year. There is plenty of room to grow, and we like the class as a whole. So I want to state that before we kind of transition into a little bit of a critique on the way they were rebuilding in this class. And I already mentioned the idea was to put weapons around Bryce Young to kind of justify that Bryce Young draft pick. I tend to think that was probably an ownership mandate, that they were going to go in and bring in assets. I don't agree with the concept. And I know that may sound rough because they didn't have a ton of weapons. Going into the 2024 season, you paid Deontay Johnson. We obviously know in hindsight that didn't really work out, but at that time, you had Deontay Johnson, you had an aging Adam Thielen, and not really much else. So I understand you had to get weapons. I get it. From a rebuilding perspective, you want to see teams like this attack the trenches. Offensive line, defensive line. If you are good there are no bad teams with a good offensive line. Period. End of discussion. That doesn't happen in the NFL. And look, there aren't very many teams with a good offensive line in general, but you start there. This was actually a really good class for tackle and guard, which is not something you can say about a lot of the classes. And I'm not going to sit here and go back and tell you what you could have gotten, because that's just hindsight being 2020, and that's really not fair to the entire process of the NFL draft as a whole. But we know that we could have attacked more pressing needs. I'll put it that way. Again, you go grab wide receiver in the 1st round. And again, I have less of a problem with the Xavier Leggett pick. That is, you wanted to add a weapon. We knew the Panthers at some point were going to add a weapon. It was a super deep wide receiver class, so maybe you could have, instead of taking one wide receiver in the 1st, you could have taken multiple wide receivers in that day 3 range, but I digress. Drafting the 1st running back off the board in a bad running back class, that's not how you rebuild a team. Running back should be the last position that you add in to a really good team. That's just, again, from a rebuilding perspective, from a team building perspective, these are things that I do think set back franchises, all right? And I understand that Panthers fans probably don't love hearing stuff like this, but I am trying to give a holistic view of what the Panthers did and, mistakes that I think the Panthers made. I'm not talking about the production. Jonathan Brooks could have been the best running back down the stretch after coming off injury. I would still be saying, hey, maybe don't go running back when there are other needs that are just more important. Edge rusher, more important. Corner, more important. And it's a good corner class. Wasn't a great edge rusher class, so I don't have a super problem with that. Offensive line, interior offensive line, more important, and it was a great interior offensive line class. Going down the line, again, 3rd round, you're drafting a linebacker. Wasn't a good linebacker class. I don't have as much of an issue with that, just because you're grabbing a defensive piece. If that was a guy you like, whatever, that's fine. And then grabbing the tight end, I only have a problem with that because of the decisions you made before that. I'm a huge fan of Sanders, so don't hear what I'm not saying. But it does feel like a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction trying to make up for how poor Bryce Young looked in his rookie season versus how great CJ Stroud looked in his rookie season. And I'm not even saying that that's 100% wrong, but when you look at the team that was the worst team in the NFL in that 23 season going into the 24 draft, it just doesn't make sense to treat it like, oh, we just need weapons and we'll be good. You weren't a couple weapons away from being good. You needed to overhaul an offensive line that wasn't great at this point last year. You need to overhaul a defensive line where you just traded away your best defensive weapon. You have a great interior defensive tackle who would end up getting hurt this year. That's not anybody's fault, but I don't know. I'm talking myself in circles, and I will probably edit that down a little bit. So apologies if it's a little bit of a rough edit because I did just kind of go on a 10-minute rant that I'll almost certainly definitely edit down. But yeah, that's my final thoughts. I am really excited to see what the Carolina Panthers do over the next 9 months. It's going to be huge. As of right now, they have 5 picks in the top 120 picks in the 2025 draft class. All right, so they have really good assets moving forward. They have a little bit of money to spend. It's going to be interesting. I'm super excited to see what happens. I'm rooting for the Carolina Panthers. I'm a really big fan of a lot of the players they have on their team. So we'll see what happens. That's all I got to say. Thank you so much for watching this long. If you're still here, please like, subscribe, and let me know what you think. Am I just completely off base on my my team building strategy theories? Let me know. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.